Okay, so we're going to look at how to set up the screen for multiple buttons and a search bar. So originally we had a design and we had just the fragment on there, which was just a map. And what we want to do is we add a couple segments, what they call linear layouts, to put some buttons in to allow us to view the satellite view and the normal map view, and then one to track so that it'll track and drop little markers when you walk around, and then clear for clearing out the markers, and then an edit text field and a search button so that you could search for points of interest. Okay, so we have to do this in XML when we're setting up our linear layouts. And so here was the original linear layout, and what this one is here is this is the segment that contains the three buttons. Okay, so we set up a linear layout with the tag linear layout, the layout width, height, and then background. You can select the color. If you start typing in, you'll get some options to select, and then a weight sum, which is just the weighting of the text and some of the graphics. So this creates, if I kind of click on this linear layout, you can kind of see that it will create this ring around this box here. Okay, so this is the linear layout for this. Then we have three buttons, and each one has a small style button, and then they each have a name associated with them and an ID. So we have the view button, the track me button, and the clear button. And then each one has some text on it, so you can put those buttons in. You could have just drugged those buttons in and then tried to position them. Sometimes it's easier just to do it in XML. The second linear layout is underneath the first one, so it's this little box in here that gets highlighted. And inside there we want to put an edit text field, and we can tweak the layout and the height and the weight of it, and then we give it an ID. This is what we're going to reference in the code. Then we put another button in next to it so that we can search for our points of interest. All right, and then we can put the fragment for the map, and whether you use this one or one that was originally given to us when we created the project, this is that. Either one should work. Okay, then that map will show up underneath. Okay, so as far as our code goes, we need to create an edit text field, and this one is going to be called location search. You can call it, my point of interest or whatever. I'm going to call it location search, and then I'm going to if you remember, the onCreate calls this async service that then has a callback that would call this onMapReady. Right, the onMapReady then will call we'll set up the location search, which is we find our view by ID, and we reference our edit text field. Okay, so we need to have that in there. All right, so that's for that. And then to add the onSearch, this is the code for adding the search field, and that's where we have the search button. So if I go to design mode and I look at my search button on click will go to the onSearch method. All right, so the onSearch method is here, and we want to make sure that we have a view parameter in here so that it will bind it to the button. We want to get the location search data out of the text field, or of that edit text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a list of addresses. We can do this with just a list. And with the Android API, we can pull from a database that then will store anything it has in the database related to that point of interest. For example, Starbucks, it will then download them, and we will populate a list for that so that we can then drop those markers down onto our map. All right, so in order to do that, we need to use our location manager and do a system call to get the system service. We set up what's called a criteria. This is an object that we pass to our service provider to get the best provider. So that's what these lines do, are to get the provider that we're going to be using in this search. We're going to be setting up for like either GPS or network-based access to the cloud. GPS won't give you access to the cloud, but our network will give us access to the cloud, like through a Wi-Fi network or cellular network. All right, so then we're going to dump the two parameters, the location and the provider. And then we're going to set up we have to set up to get our user location. So we set up a lat long user location, and we're going to do a try catch on checking to see if we can get the last known location, which is having to generate a known location so that we can get the last one, so that we kind of have a hint on where we are. That way we don't have to wait too long in order to get a position fix. Okay, so we want to check to see that our location manager is not equal to null. If it's null, we don't want to try to run this code, otherwise we will we'll have a null pointer exception here, and we don't want to crash the phone. So we do a call to get last known location, pass to it the network provider. As long as that's not equal to null, then we create a lat long coordinate, and we put it into our user location. Okay, so we take our current location, latitude, and then my location, longitude, and we push it into our user location. And I'll show you what this is going to be in just a bit, how we set this. Then we just print out a couple messages, a log D message and a toast message. Okay. Otherwise, if our location manager get last known location from our GPS provider is not equal to null, so we're going to check our network provider, which is Wi-Fi and/or cellular, and then GPS, which is just the satellites. If that is not null, then we'll get our user location from that, and again print it out. Otherwise, we'll say that my location is null. We weren't able to get anything from our provider. Okay, so then we have a couple log D messages there. And we're going to catch either a security exception, meaning we tried to access something that we weren't allowed to, or some illegal argument exception. And we do a log and then a toast message. Okay, so now that we've got this is the code for our user location. Okay, so that's what that does in there. All right, so I will just move it back here so you can see it. So this is for all the user location. All right, so now we're going to do the code to basically get the stuff from the cloud that is related to the point of interest, so that we can then map it onto plot it onto the map. All right, so we have to create what's called a geocoder, and this will allow us to create a query to a database that is in our current locale, which in our case it's the US. So we want to set that up to be the US locale. And then we're going to try and catch again a call to our get from location name. So this is basically saying we're going to pass to it whatever was in our field, so our location. And then sorry, not what was in the field. This is our current location. And then what we're going to do is take from our current location, and we're going to define a box around it. And that box, then what we're going to do is we're going to say that box will contain a lower left corner and an upper right corner in the box. Okay, so we define those by taking our user location and our latitude and longitude, so the coordinates there, and then we subtract off to go to the lower left. We subtract off, in this case I'm trying to go 5 miles, so this would be 5 over, and there's a coordinate conversion of like 60 degrees per mile, so we'll go about 5 miles over to the lower left, and then we go plus 5 miles up to the upper right. Okay, so this will actually create that list. We pass to it, and I think I misspoke. Pass to it the location of what we're trying to find, the number of results that we want. So the maximum number that if they find a ton of them in there, like maybe Starbucks, there might be a bunch. Those are the maximum number that you would store in your address list, which we define up above. That's what this list was. And then and then we define the box around from which we're going to search. So if it's outside of that box, it's not going to put anything in there. If it's inside the box, then you could have as many as 10,000 that would be put into the list. All right, then we catch an IO exception and print out a stack trace. And then we check to see if the address list is not empty. Then what we do is we just use a for loop and we iterate through the address list, create a lat long, a coordinate essentially, from the address that was in the address list. We get the latitude and longitude, and then we can add the marker on our map. So we do a mmap add marker. We want to give it a the marker option, so you can play around with this by looking at this API. The position that we want to put it at is at our lat long coordinate. And then we can put a title in there, and the title is we're going to put the number that's from the address list, and then this address.get subthoroughfare, which will give us the location, right? It's just the address location. Okay, so we put that in there, so that way if we tap the marker, it will tell us it'll print out what the marker where the address is for that particular point of interest. All right, and then we animate the camera, so we push it towards it. Okay, so if I were to just look at this, then here, and say, for example, I was searching for Starbucks, and okay, so if we were to push Starbucks into this field, and then hit the search button, what we should see then is that we get our geocoder created, and it'll drop a marker down to where there's a Starbucks, and in this case here it's pointing one over here. And so if I tap on it, what I should see is the address come up. And so that's that's the element. So that's the item in the list, and there's the address. All right, so that handles the search part. The next time we're going to talk about the get location.